Welcome. All right, well, we're here to talk about emerging markets, and I think it's only appropriate that we start with you, Mohammed. We're here in Saudi Arabia, obviously, and you have a startup that has been named by LinkedIn as one of the most successful startups multiple years in a row. Tell us a little bit about your company, and what is it about starting it here that made it so successful?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here. Our company called SILQ, with a Q, which is inspired by the Silk Road. And the idea here is to integrate a global network with the marketplaces within local market. And we were one of the early that built a local B2B marketplace that help manufacture and marginalize SMEs businesses. That's called SARI. And what excites us about this is when we look at the problem in terms of financial exclusion in emerging markets, almost kind of 5.7 trillion. So we focus on building the first layer of commerce, and we chose Saudi because there are tons of tailwinds when it comes to e-invoicing, Vision 2030, Expo that is magnetic to a lot of supplier, manufacturer. So we thought one of the biggest questions we ask ourselves, we talk to our community is, why now? And I think it's the best time to build here in Riyadh. So that is why we started and why we think why now is critical for us to build that new trade layer that is fully integrated to the local market and has that liquidity to make it scale and grow beyond limits.
Yeah. Mpumi, I know that you had a big announcement recently that JP Morgan was investing an additional $30 million into your business, Bidvest. That's a huge deal for any entrepreneur. Tell us how that relationship came about. Did they find you? Did you find them?
Thank you. So JP Morgan has been a long-term investor in Bidvest. We are listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. And in fact, more than 50% of our shareholders are offshore. So we've got a fantastic offshore interest in South Africa and offshore interest in the group, and that's been fantastic. And they're long-term shareholders, and it's not just them. Westwood, that's based in Boston, is a big shareholder. Lazard Asset Management is a big shareholder. So we do have a number of your more large asset managers that see value, that are happy with the return, and that are happy with the growth story of Bidvest.
Fantastic. And Lutfey, one of your roles now is to bring more investment into Bangladesh.
Yes.
I wonder, how's it going, and what's your pitch? What's the elevator pitch?
Well, elevator pitch, I'm not sure can stick. I just want to take a step back and zoom out. This morning we heard about tectonic shifts and changes in the global order. The IMF released a report last week that showed the global uncertainty, according to their index, is twice as high as the most recent peak during COVID, and 4 times or 5 times as high as a decade ago. And there are various components to that, was deglobalization, digitalization, decarbonization, demographics. With all of these, what do we do as a country? We look at what our natural national endowments are and how can we lean into these global vectors of change. For us, it's really our people. We are certainly the most densely populated country in the world, 175 million people, a third of the size of Thailand, with the population of Russia and Canada combined. Young people, 25 years of age or so. So in terms of how we may recognize it here in Saudi Arabia, our crude oil is our young people. But we need refineries so that we're able to find applications for various grades of skills and education. So that is really the place where we need to invest, and that's also the resource that we are willing to share with the rest of the world, because the rest of the world, by and large, is aging. I can tell you later how we're actually doing it, but I'll stop there.
Well, Mohammed, speaking of successful founders and startup culture, what do you think differentiates a successful founder in this part of the world versus maybe in Silicon Valley or some other capital?
Well, I think founders globally are kind of consistent in terms of being obsessed with a problem.
Obsessed.
And solving something that is big and aspiring. I think when it comes to different geography. It's about understanding localization, innovation according to the market, to the norm, and to the tradition. But what unify entrepreneur globally is going after massive, daring market. When you look at, for example, in Saudi, 90% of the businesses in Saudi are SMEs, yet they receive only 9% of the lending from the bank. So it's a massive kind of gap. And the challenges goes greater when you go to other emerging markets. So it's a massive market, been lingering for decades. So we think that's what excites talent, what excites community to go build around that. So I think one is tackling bigger problem, tackling something that daring, that cultivate a culture. And then I think what differentiate here, I think, is a younger generation. And been speaking to a lot of investors. We have backers from globally, Peter Thiel Fund and others, and we have local fund like PIF investing in us. I think one of the key elements here is there are tons of tailwinds. You see open banking happening, so you have that full transparency. You have e-invoicing that has been adopted by all. So a lot of kind of capability make that infrastructure fertile. So you have young generation, big, undisrupted kind of market, massive tailwind, and a massive appetite from a global investor. So I think just understanding the problem, being obsessed with them, and kind of learn from a global kind of landscape, but apply innovation to solve local problem differently.
Sure. And Mpumi, when you're looking at different, we were talking about, you know, a company that you've invested in that does the, you know, things in restrooms, like the soap dispensers and the paper towel. What are you looking for in terms of, this is a business I think can grow, this is something I want to be involved with?
Yeah, so I mean, our philosophy is around business models that fit a particular criteria, right? So we're looking for businesses that are asset light. We're looking for businesses that have recurring income. We're looking for businesses that are inherently defensive in their nature. So we watch a lot around how those businesses perform through COVID, how did they perform through a financial crisis, et cetera, so that we can assess the extent of the defensiveness. And then we've got financial metrics that we're looking for. So we're looking for high margin, high return, high cash generative businesses. That's generally what we're looking for. And so at the moment, 30% of our operations are outside of South Africa. We're building a large global hygiene business. We're number 2 in the world at the moment. And so we're looking for those types of assets to consolidate kind of globally. But more importantly, outside of the business model, we're looking for the best management teams in the world. Because ultimately, how you run a successful business is through people. And so even in our due diligence process, even if we tick all the other metrics, if we don't tick the people one, we will walk away. So we acquire the best management teams who happen to do what we do.
Yeah. Speaking of people, I know that you've said that sometimes people will leave your company, but then they come right back. And to talk a little bit about creating a culture that people want to come back to.
Yeah, I think not only to leave and come back, but when we started, I think SILQ, we said, how can we create a wave that people leave and build company, build ecosystem, find. And when you go to a bigger problem, there are a lot of nuances can be built around that kind of ecosystem. So we have an ESOP with a lot of our employees who they have an equity within the company, giving them that exit and capability to go build their own company. So we take a pride in actually creating that an alumni network. A lot of people actually come in as a potential entrepreneur. So we think they're gonna come through that curve, learn, understand how to apply, then have that capability to go. So within that ESOP, we're giving them that segue to go build bigger impact. So that is the focus, is not just to cultivate the best talent, but also equip them to go build kind of the next venture that disrupt within the same ecosystem.
Yeah, and potentially you could partner with them in the future.
Potentially.
Lutfey, I know we have actually 2 former investment bankers on our panel, both you and Mohammed. What did those years teach you that's now helping you in your current role?
I think I want to go back to Bangladesh because since this is becoming a bit of an infomercial, I need to I need to do my bit. So first of all, I'll take names that are in the public domain. I have letters of commendation from Chevron, MetLife, Young One, the makers of North Face jackets, on just how remarkable and action-oriented the business and investment climate in Bangladesh has become in the last year or so. Mohammed, I believe you've also gotten yourselves involved in there as well.
Absolutely.
And the reason for this is, let's be very clear, there is now complete consensus that we need a master key to unlock a master door for all the economic aspirations of the country. The master door is private investment, foreign direct investment in particular, and the master key is government reforms. Unless government is agile and responsive and ready for the world order that we described earlier on, we're going to be found flat-footed. And so that's why there's a tremendous amount of actual, on-the-ground, action-oriented reforms that we're undertaking, and I would invite everyone to come and test it. It is informed, of course, by my background in investment banking, because I know what it looks like, having run global emerging markets for a global investment bank, what it looks like from the other side of the table. So I can trace your journey and the investor experience, and I would encourage everyone to come and test it.
Is there one deal that to you sort of seems like a model that you would like to repeat? You dropped a couple of names, but is there one deal that comes to mind?
I think it's rather than pick a favorite, I think what I would say is I would pick a template. And the template is we now have a souped up, refined, streamlined investment development authority, which has been merged with our economic zones authority. I run an interministerial investment coordination committee that meets roughly once a month with the governor of the central bank, the head of customs and inland revenue, the port authorities, etc. And we just make sure that nothing gets stuck in the interministerial system. And that in itself has been able to, has allowed us to convert what is an interest into an actual investment in record time.
Yeah. Mpumi, we had a whole panel on Africa earlier today, but I wonder if you can just tell us a little bit about Africa's growth story and what are some of the drivers that you think are going to be important in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so I mean, I listened to the panel, so I know what the content was about, and the point that I'd like to make one point, so that's the only thing that's really remembered. I think that the disconnect when we have a conversation around the continent is that we disproportionately focus on a conversation around risk versus a conversation around value, return, etc. So when we talk about opportunities in developed markets, we talk about market proxies, indices. We talk about value creation. We talk about risk, but more how it has been de-risked, right? We talk differently. Yet when we switch to a conversation about the African continent, risk perception becomes the big thing. And I think we need to change the discourse when we talk about the African continent. Lastly, I think I'd like to say when you talk about the African continent, look at businesses on the continent and what they have achieved, and let that be your proxy. If I use Bidvest as an example, we've been around for 37 years. In 2016, we were in 34 countries across the world. We listed our international operations separately, and today that business called Bidcorp is double the market cap of its parent company, right? We are again rebuilding that international footprint. We're now 30% offshore. All of this is being built off a balance sheet from an African business. That's what Africa can give you.
Amazing. And it was interesting when you were speaking earlier, you said one of the things you're looking for is defensive, something that can survive a recession or a global pandemic. Tell us a little bit more about that approach, because I feel like we hear so much about growth, but you have a different perspective.
Yeah, so I mean, it's people actually don't realize that it's the more below the line kind of business models that aren't fancy, where they just will continue giving you growth. And I mean, the business model that we were talking about specifically was washroom services. And if I use that as an example, It's the soap dispenser, it's the paper dispenser, it's the air freshener, it's the stuff that you don't think about when you walk into a washroom, but you expect to be there. So the reality is that even when there's a tariff war, there's going to be soap in the washroom. Even when there's an economic downturn, you still need toilet paper in the washroom. And so it's those kind of very basic, simple business models actually that at time continue to just exist regardless of what happens in the world and how changes kind of take place.
Yeah. Moving back to your startup, I think one of the things you've decided is to try and grow into a decacorn instead of do an IPO. Tell us a little bit about that calculus.
Yeah, I think just to add on the point of, I think, not only about growth, but building that durability. And kind of a few years ago, I stumbled on one of the kind of the podcasts, and it was like, build a phoenix that can survive 100 years rather than a unicorn. So for me, it was, how can we build that durability? How can we build something that is lasting rather than focus on probably the next couple of years? And the focus for us is, we have a problem, and I've spoken to different founders globally solving the same problem, and I realized that we have a unified broken unit, which is SMEs is inexpensive to serve by classical legacy system and to require better velocity, a lightweight asset. And we looked at company globally, how can we build that coalition? And that's why we created SILQ, and we have now a company in Bangladesh called ShopUp, served more than 500,000 kind of businesses. We partner with companies like MasterCard to get an inclusion to a lot of women-driven businesses that contributing to the Bangladeshi market. The same thing here in Saudi. We're kind of empowering around R1 billion in terms of financing to the small businesses that is nano to bigger merchant. I think one of the bigger problem we focus on is something called kind of a data desert. Is a lot of these client is invisible to the bank, unclear to the bank, and we're trying to solve that. And I think with the age of AI, that will kind of give us that scalability, will give us that efficient growth as we go. So I think initially we started with an obsession to solve something that a problem for me, for my colleagues, and we're coming back from, like, I used to work with Kareem, the first unicorn in the region. I helped them launch a lot of market, and I've seen you need to build something that is scalable and something that create that ripple effect. So we solved it for us initially, how to solve that supply chain. Then the dream got bigger. How can we solve that to Saudi? But then we realized that probably a problem exists for the global South, and how can we build a bigger kind of unification? And I think we got that multiplier effect. The more we learn from Saudi, we feed into Bangladesh, to feed into India and other markets. The system is get better and attract better talent, and we create that kind of lasting impact.
Yeah. Lutfey, I know, speaking of AI, you've expressed some caution about AI. There are things that worry you. If you could just give us a few words of hope and, caution.
Well, what I really, really like about the stories I'm hearing here is that we're talking about the use case and the impact and the people you're serving who are underserved at the moment, as opposed to, here's a shiny new piece of technology, let's take it to unicorn and then decacorn and off we go. I think that world has destroyed so much value in recent years. So I'm very glad we're talking here about real people and real jobs and real enterprise. The thing about emerging markets is that if we can get the governance piece right, I keep on coming back to that as the master key, because if we can't get it right, it becomes the master knot in the noose, if you like. But if we can get it right, emerging markets, countries like Bangladesh, we know what the potential is. We're so behind our potentials. We can harness technologies and management techniques and the learnings that we just heard about, and really use that for our fast-tracking growth, which is the title of our session. We can really do that because we are so far behind our frontier. It's much more difficult for some of the countries that are already at the frontier, and they're only looking at efficiency drives as opposed to growing the pie.
I can't believe that brings us to the end. I'm going to think of you whenever I wash my hands in the restroom. Thank you all.
Use a lot of soap. Use a lot of
Exactly.
soap.
I'm going to use a lot of soap, a lot of towels. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks very much.